G'day, today I'm going to do a green timber bowl. That is a bowl made from green timber or wet timber. A timber that is straight off the tree, and this is the tree that I've selected. It is a bull oak, native to this area. This one's actually fallen down. It is still alive, but it soon will be cleaned up by the farmer, I know. So I'm going to cut a section of the timber out of here, take it home, turn it while the timber is really quite wet, put it in a microwave, and I hope the microwave will dry it out, but also that the timber or the bowl itself will warp in a uniform manner. It's very heavy stuff, this bull oak. Off we go to the bandsaw. Now, one of the advantages of working with green timber is that it's a lot easier to cut. This is particularly hard timber, bull oak, very, very hard timber, and that cut with the bandsaw that I just did would have taken me 3 or 4 times the length of time if this was dry. The other advantage is that if this had have dried out, this would have had splits all the way through it. So I've got to now think about the size of the bowl and where I'd like it. Now there is the pith, there is the centre of my wood. Now I've got to cut that out. I've got to cut either that side or either side like that. I could have a bowl coming along here and get another one there, so there's my bowl in there, or I could come this way. So I've got to make that decision. If I came that way, I'd have a bowl in here and then another deeper bowl here. So I might actually, I'm thinking about coming through there and doing a bowl out of here like so. So I'm going to start now, cut through there like that, along there. And what I do is, rather than going through there, I stand this up because I've got a big enough bandsaw. I can stand it up and put it through the bandsaw like so. And that's why I like bull oak. Beautiful figure, beautiful colour. Usually it's more this colour than that colour there, but this has got a lovely range of different colours through here. Now what I tend to do is I measure across there like so, just with my hand, and that gives me the length. So my length only needs to be down there somewhere, and then I'll get a round bowl in there like so. Well, I've got it on the band, so I'm just going to cut the corners off. There we go. Face plate on here, and then we can turn the outside. I can feel how much moisture's in there. It's very wet. Onto the lathe now. Right, we're on the lathe here, and I'm going to connect the wood to the lathe via a faceplate, 4 screws in there. A good thing about green bowl turning is that the screws go in so much easier. You don't have to drill any pilot holes. The 4th screw goes in, and that's going into the harder section of the timber, the heartwood. Just back off towards the end there because I don't want to snap the heads of the screws off. And on the lathe, I've tilted the lathe head, the headstock, or swiveled it to one side so that's going to be comfortable for me to turn this bowl without the bed of the lathe getting in the way. Now I am going to wear a face mask with this because this bark is going to be a bit of a worry to me. It's quite, initially that's quite soft and it will come away quite easily. So I don't want that flicking into my face as I turn. Get the tool rest onto the angle there. Make sure I spin the wood by hand first, just make sure it doesn't hit the tool rest. Grab my bowl gouge, grab my face mask, and we're ready to go. Now with this bowl, the focus is on turning a green wood bowl. It's not so much a focus on how I use a bowl gouge and all that sort of stuff and how I turn the bowl, because a lot of that has been dealt with in other videos. So there is a video, for instance, called No Catch Bowl Turning, worth a look, and that covers a lot of the techniques that I am going to be using when I turn this bowl. So let's get on to it. I'll talk about the things that are relevant to green timber. I've slowed the lathe down. It's not a regular blank, so I'm going to speed that lathe up until it wobbles. See if I can get that wobble out of it. There it is there. And as I'm spinning the wood, I can feel water coming off there. You can perhaps see it on my hand. There's a lot of water coming out of it. So one of the things that you might want to do is make sure that things that are going to get sprayed with water are protected. The lathe, well, you need to mop that down afterwards. What's in the background, etc. So protect things from moisture if you need to. Let's get stuck into it. Good, turning green timber is so easy. It comes off very, very quickly. Now this is extremely hard wood, as I keep saying. Turning it green is the way to go. The other good thing is that you eliminate almost all dust issues, even when you're sanding. You can see how wet, that's all sort of like a paste in there. So at the moment I'm just getting this bowl filled up. Now this is where the beauty of these replaceable tip bowl gouge is illustrated, because that is quite an overhang over the tool edge, and I'm not getting any shattering off the tool because of that rigid shaft. Back the other one. Now this is effectively cutting up the hill against the grain, but they're just roughing cuts, just getting the wood off quickly. Now I'm going to establish the shape of my foot here. Point, I'm going to establish the diameter of my foot. I'm going to turn a spigot on there to take the foot, and it's going to be that big. That's the size of the foot. Sorry, that's the size of the spigot, and the foot's just going to be a little bit bigger than that. So there's the spigot that's going to hold the bowl onto the lathe, and then there'll be a foot after that. Up to now I've done really nothing different with this green bowl that I have with a normal bowl. But it just cuts so cleanly. Look at that, no tear out, just so clean, wet. Look at the my forearm here, that's quite wet now. I'm pretty happy with that. And look at the colour range through here, it's going to be beautiful. A skew chisel to define the spigot. So that's the spigot that I will use to hold the bowl onto the chuck with. And I'm going to hollow out underneath there. And I'm hollowing quite deeply so that part of the foot will be hollowed. So this is my foot diameter here, and that's the spigot there. I quite like this curve, but I'm just going to refine that shape with a skew chisel, just as a scraper. But I like that curve. It's very subtle, but it's just a constantly changing curve. There's no flaps on there. Look at that, beautiful. Now we've got to sand this, but before I do, I'm going to just check that my chuck that I'm going to go and put on there is going to fit. So this is going to hold it like so, and that is going to clamp on there nicely. Pretty happy with that. Now the sanding is the issue. Have a look what's going to happen if we just use standard sandpaper. See that? It's just clogging the sandpaper up. So what am I going to do? Right, this is my setup for sanding green timber bowls. A plastic ice cream container full of some water and wet and dry sandpaper. I've got water in there to keep on replenishing, or to keep the water up to the sandpaper, to clean the pores out of the sandpaper. Lathe not going very fast. What speed? I'm only going about 450 RPM, and it does sand. You can see that is sawdust and water mixed together, so we are sanding. This is 120 grit, and we are sanding. Now you can actually sand dry timber the same way, and the advantage of that is, similar to this, is it just keeps the dust down. See all of that? Just put that in the water, gets rid of a lot of that. Off we go. You can see all the paste from sawdust and water there. I think that's enough with 120, and when I see you next, this will be sanded. Right, I'm just finishing off the sanding here. This is 320 grit, and I'll just finish with the 320 grit. Even dry bullock, I don't sand much further than 320 grit. So we'll finish this sanding and then we'll turn the bowl around. Now I've got the chuck on the lathe here, and look at the mess that I've made down here. Now this water on cast iron beds is not a good combination, so I'm going to wipe that down. Let's have a look at the spigot. The spigot is about 1/4 of an inch, 6 mil deep. The diameter is about 45, 47, 48, 50 mil, somewhere in there. And it's going to get tightened onto there nicely. That should be enough to hold that on there beautifully. Tighten that up. Let's just slow the lathe down and speed it up slowly. And that's spinning beautifully that way. And we're ready to turn. I'll just turn that off. Get that tool rest closer, and we're ready to turn. Just spin by hand, get the guts out. Now what I have done is a screw has broken off there, so I'm going to have to deal with that some stage. Now turning the inside of the bowl, much the same as any normal bowl, but there's a couple of things I'd like to talk about a bit further on down the track. On I'm going to just make sure that I true up this face. I'll go a bit faster. So true up this face. Now I'm going to get the wall quite thin on this bowl. I'm going to turn it right down to about that thin because I want to see this really warp. So I'm going to start by boring out the middle as I would normally do. Not going too hard at it. I don't want to break off the tenon on the wood. And what I want to do here is I want to work on a section of this thin wall because this is going to start warping very, very quickly. So I'm going to work on this first, say, inch or 25 mil and get that down to the wall thickness that I want, then keep on going deeper and deeper. So this is going to be worked on first. So there's my final cut on that section there. And now I'm going to go deeper. I might now get the tool rest into the bowl like so on an angle. And off we go. Now I'm very close, so I'm just going to do one final very careful cut here with my bowl gouge. Just the smallest of cuts. Right down to the bottom. I'm just going to use my negative rake scraper in the bottom there just to get rid of that pimple down the bottom, and I'll see how that's going. Feels good. A couple of other ways to deal with sanding, the issue of sanding, because we're going to get the sandpaper clogged, is to actually dry out the surface. And one way to dry out the surface is just use one of these hot air guns, and you can just dry out the surface sufficiently to do some sanding in there. You're not trying to dry the wood out completely, just the surface. What I've also used is a butane torch in there. Get a flame and just wave that in there. You don't actually burn the wood, you just wave it over there. You often can see the wood drying out. It goes a lighter colour and it dries the surface out sufficiently to do the sanding. What it also does is can cause the wood to start to warp or start warping, and so that's another factor you've got to overcome. But if we're sanding, it doesn't really matter if it's actually warping, because if you sand slowly, your hand's just going to go with the warp of the wood. So you can actually now see dust coming off. So that means that this process has sanded or dried that wood out sufficiently on the surface for us to sand. Bit of clogging of the sandpaper. I'm going to get a little brass brush like that and just give that a bit of a clean up. And that's sanding up nicely. I'm just going to hurry things up a bit by getting this onto my drill. Right, we're just finishing off the sanding. I can see that the bowl is warping a little bit, not as much as some timbers. But the idea here is that if you get the bowl going slowly, then your sander whether it be your hand or this or whatever it is going to follow that wobble. If you go too quickly with this, you might actually sand through that wobble and it start to get an uneven wall thickness. So that's it for the sanding. Turn that lathe off and we'll now go off to the microwave and stick it in the microwave. There we have it. Now I could leave this to air dry over time, but just to speed things up I'm going to go for the microwave. Now I've got a dedicated microwave in my workshop. It's just a second-hand one. You don't want to be doing this inside in the one that you cook or heat food up with, because your next meal will taste like bull oak, or it will taste like whatever timber you are drying in there. Believe me, I know that from experience. I wasn't very popular. So in we go. The idea is that we don't set this for 5 minutes and wait for the microwave to start smoking. Perhaps a minute on full is all we need to do for the first burst. So a minute will go, start, and we'll be back in a minute. So we can see some steam coming out there, which means that there is still some moisture in here. This is quite hot, and we can see how it's warping. And the thing I like about oak is that it warps at this point here. It warps upwards at this point here and over here. So this is actually going to warp quite symmetrically, I would have thought. And that's quite hot, so I'm going to leave that for a little bit and come back to it in a sec once it's cooled down. Now one thing you can do is you can weigh your bowl first before you put it in, record that weight, put it in the microwave, take it out, weigh it again, and keep going like that until that weight sort of stabilises or plateaus, and that way you'll know that you've done all the drying you can possibly do. I just go by trial and error, and I'll put it in a couple of more times and leave it at that. So there's a bowl turned from green wood, some wet wood, straight from the tree to the lathe. I hope you enjoyed that project. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and like my Facebook page, U-Turn with Brendan Stemp. Safe turning. I'll see you another time.